Lance Hall here for Let's Discuss with Lance Hall. Happy to welcome Alan Averill, bassist vocalist for Dread Sovereign. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm not too bad.
Skyping in from Ireland this evening.
Yes.
You have a new album, Alchemical Warfare, coming out January 15th on Metal Blade Records. Alan, I've heard a advanced copy of it. It is a fantastic album. You got to be looking really forward to getting this out to the masses.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's I decided not to release a record this year. This year can get fucked.
Yeah.
So I thought, let's see what next year has to offer. So let's start in January. And yeah, I mean it's a very strange time to be releasing music. To be honest with you, as all it is really talking on Skype and watching numbers.
Yeah.
So it is what it is for now, and so yeah, it's January the 15th. Yeah.
I was listening to your podcast where you pretty much nailed what I was going to talk about with the interview and what you just mentioned. Your Agitators Anonymous podcast about music and everything. The frustration level must be incredibly high to have an album like this ready to come out and the world just in the shape that it's in. How are you coping with it all?
Yeah, badly.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It's been a fucking angry nightmare. No, it's look, it's complicated. I'm not a man prone to being particularly emotional about things. I kind of admire the stoic attitude to life. So you try and keep being creative. That's why I started doing the podcast and kept on trying to be busy. But yes, I mean, at the same time, it is about agency and purpose. And without travel, it's very clear to us now within the heavy metal scene that without touring, without festivals and gigs, the artery of heavy metal and rock is severed. At least for me, it's severed. And without those things, then all the things the reasons why we started playing in a band have kind of become null and void. And I mean, even for a long time, we weren't allowed to meet, to rehearse, etc. So if playing music is now just being reduced to being a content creator and a square on a screen, then at least for me, I won't make any more heavy metal. I don't see any point. Because heavy metal is, okay, maybe for somebody who is making music for a computer game or something, I don't know, perhaps. But yeah, the world is in a very, very strange and precarious position. And I do have a terrible feeling that the concept of being a musician or an artist doesn't have quite the same place in whatever this new potential reality comes out of this. I hope to be wrong. I've been saying this in interviews and to anybody who will listen that my pessimism, I hope, is amplified by the situation and the circumstance and just being locked inside and in this anti-human process. And so therefore my hope is that it's more benign than malign. But these are things I've been thinking and discussing for decades, and this is what they look like. This is the creeping hand of authoritarianism. And I can't, it feels disingenuous to sit here and talk about, we recorded the drums like this, and people are saying to me, questions today like, have you announced a tour and blah blah. It's like, or somebody said to me today, what's going to happen to festivals when Iron Maiden are too old to play? And I said, mate, you should be worried that we have festivals at all. Like, do you not understand where things are? And so yeah, it's if Primordial, my other band, if we had an album to release now, I wouldn't release it. Because the truth is there's nothing in it for me. And that may sound selfish to people who like Primordial and would like some new music to keep them going in this time, and I understand that as well. But just talking on Skype and then watching numbers of streams that will never pay us anything anyway is not the reason why I began. I started music or whatever. So yeah, I can't pretend to be. I can't pretend to be optimistic about the situation that we're in. But having said that, I've told people in the podcast repeatedly, like, hey, if you see me in 9 months at a festival or a gig, and things are, um, back to we're approaching normal, then yeah, fucking poke me in the ribs and mock me and buy me a beer. But um, something tells me that that's not what's happening.
Yeah, and it's so bizarre. And the other thing, I guess, as listening to you talk, being over here in the States where I am, there was almost sort of a nonchalance about going out to live shows too. There wasn't the drive that there is over in Europe. When I talk to European bands and stuff, the fan base over there is so fanatic, and over here it's not. And I gotta wonder, you don't always miss something until it's gone. And now that we've gone so long without shows, hope the people go back and go to them.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's several layers to that question. One of them is that I think some people won't go back. They won't feel safe. They've been scared enough as it is, and they will. There are people who won't go back to living society as they did before. Even if we were allowed to, I think they will still observe distancing, this and that and the other. There are people who I know people who enjoy this situation. They're quite happy to stay inside, and they won't go to shows either. And then, of course, there's people who've been making lots of noise about live shows, and then you think to yourself, well, you didn't go to local shows before this anyway. It's such a multi-layered, complex question, because don't forget, other than music, we're also talking about comedy, theatre.
Yeah.
We're talking about, I was joking to my friend, I said to her, you're never gonna, you're not gonna dance with a stranger again, and she was like, what? I said, hey, that people who advocate for the most strictest terms of lockdown, I don't think they realize that the level of anti-humanism that's involved in it, and the fact that you don't do things like go and dance with strangers. You don't. There's no theatre. There's no, one of the oldest expressions known to man in the town square. You bang a drum and I'll fucking dance, or whatever. Even further back to your hunter-gatherer past, or whatever, or as you said, the theatre in the town square. This doesn't happen, and we lose this. We lose our humanity, and therefore artistic expression within that is, it's under a very grave and existential threat. Both real and, as I said, existential, because also we have to consider what venues are left, what festivals go to the wall, who's left standing. How do countercultures survive this social cult? Because what we do is, the very few percentage of people at the top of this financially are doing very well. And something like a counterculture, let's say you've got a small punk bar in a venue near you, and you live in a small town or a small city, that relies on its 50 to 100 patrons to keep going. And without it, it closes. And then that scene kind of closes as well. So I hate to be the sort of harbinger of doom, but and I know that people find it very hard to live with all of kind of senses of negativity, but I think an awful lot of people haven't quite realized how serious some of this is potentially. I mean, nobody has stood on a stage in Ireland for 9 months. No one. And the state hasn't even tried. During the summer, they didn't even try to give the public maybe a free open-air show or anything to give them some humanity back. And so this is, what we're going through now is a sort of classic case of, Stalinist demoralization of society. So if it's for a reason other than, as I said, what it could be, then, I think we're in some serious trouble.
Yeah, you really touched on it there. This whole lockdown and isolation and everything is, to me, dampening down so many things. But the biggest thing is like emotion, and that's what rock and roll and metal and everything is all about. To me at least. And once you dampen that down, it's hard to get it back. Everybody's just sort of living, in a bubble, just one level. And
yeah, I mean, I've spoken to in real life, I think 2 people I didn't know this whole year, or just in the 9 months. People can't live like that.
Yeah.
And so they either they either break one way or the other. And so, it's clear to me that, okay, things are a little bit different in the USA than in Europe, I think, but it's clear that the worst case scenarios that were predicted health-wise, this is not as lethal as we were told, when it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Right.
It isn't. The statistics don't bear that out, and there's lots of strange things happening with those statistics. And, it's, I think that there are plenty of people who misunderstood the nature of power in politics. They didn't, at least I said it to, the interview before this, I said, if someone can name me a moment in history where the citizens of a nation state gave away this many freedoms to the structures of the state or government and got them back, I'd like to know it, because I don't think it exists.
Yeah.
The nature of power in politics, you don't get these things, all of them, back. And so, it's very difficult to know. Like I said, it could just be benign, and it could be that the things that we knew about society return, and people are overjoyed to have live music back and that kind of thing. Or the state, the local institutions of health and safety require everything to be distanced. They require everybody to have a biometric health passport to take part in society, to go to a show or whatever. And so, if that's true, then things will change irrevocably.
I've seen it. Go ahead. Excuse me. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's
Yeah. I've seen a couple of posts over here. I mean, I don't know if they're 100% or not. I've seen them enough, and I haven't seen anything to the contrary yet. Supposedly, over here now, like Live Nation, some of these big concert promoters are going to require people to show proof of vaccination in order to get into a show for insurance purposes.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It is, yes, because essentially what then will theoretically happen in a worst case scenario is that all companies adopt the same principle, whether it's airlines. And so even though the state will tell you that it's voluntary, it isn't really, because you just won't be able to take part in society unless you have it. And then that health passport will be a biometric digitized health passport, which will be within your phone, and it can be used kind of like the Chinese social currency system, where what you end up is with a digitally micromanaged authoritarian state that controls your level of personal sovereignty. Now that is a very serious, rather Orwellian, dystopian potentiality, but if anybody can really sit down and look at what's happening and tell me there isn't a percentage of what's happening that looks like that, I think they're being naive and they haven't really assessed the facts properly, because it's pretty clear that Live Nation can do that, and look, if you just go and see Bruce Springsteen once a year, and that's okay, that's for you, but what if that is for every show, every small show, every small bar has to install this technology, etc. And like I said, if everybody, again, I see things like, if people are on universal basic income, then, the conformity to this digitized system has its own problems within the parameters of getting money from the very same state. But, look, you can see where my thought process goes with this.
Yeah.
And it could just be the equivalent of, like, when you arrive in, or you have to fly to Southeast Asia or some places in South America, where you need to get the various shots, and that all of this is just a money grab by Big Pharma. But
you took the words right out of my mouth.
The idea.
I've been saying that for 6 months.
I also find this incredible that people are placing their freedom in the hands of Big Pharma. And I said to my friend the other day, I said, this is the same system that created the opioid crisis. the same system that for 50 years has been pushing people to medicate themselves, whether it's through antidepressants or Prozac, and this is the system that you trust your freedom in. I mean, really? Yeah. So, there's so many complicated questions with all of this, because it looks like 20 different things at the same time. So it looks like it could just be a botched response by a broken structure, where politicians and health officials are so afraid of personal jeopardy that they've set out their stall in one direction and they can't change the way we're headed. Or it could be something benign, or else, as I said, it could be this other thing. So it's complicated.
Definitely.
And I feel weird talking about music while it's happening. To be honest with you, because like I said, people say to me, "Oh, have you got a tour? Organized?" And I go, "Which part of the news are you not paying attention to?"
Yeah.
I mean, and also the other thing is that, we can't function without hope, so to say, and that sounds rather strange for somebody like me to say, who's been singing about nihilism for 20 or 30 years. But I understand people who find my attitude to all of this a bit too pessimistic, a bit too nihilistic. But it's you have to kind of call it a certain way when it looks a certain way. I think that would be, I can't lie to myself and convince myself that this all seems like, just a health crisis.
Yeah.
Even if I hope it to be. But you know what I mean, I guess.
Yeah, you and I could sit down over a couple of pints, socially distanced, of course, and everything, and have a very, very good conversation about all this, because you have said exactly what's been on my mind with this thing from the start. So yeah.
I mean, I think that there is, and I understand this. There is a disbelief. For example, in a country like Ireland, which is one of the oldest democracies in the world, there is a disbelief that this couldn't happen here, and I understand that, because Ireland has never had authoritarianism or fascism or communism. It has no history of tyranny or dictatorship or authoritarianism, and so I understand that people, when you say to them like, "Hey, this is a soft form of that," they go like, "What? No, that can't happen here." And I do agree. The concept of it being a global cabal of people would have so many working parts to it that it would be impractical and unworkable. But yet at the same time, I look out the window and at a country like Ireland, and you see police on the streets. You see, they have new emergency laws designed to, infringe people's civil liberties. I don't see anybody on either political party holding the state to account. I don't see our mainstream media holding politicians to account. They've been completely complicit in whatever whatever's happening. So it's very complicated, because it does look like how it looks, and that's it should terrify people.
Yeah.
But I understand most people are just like, pushing through, going, look, we just want to get a good Christmas and etc. But it's I unfortunately think it might be more complicated than that.
Yeah, I agree too. Very much so. Talking with Alan Averill of Dread Sovereign here. New album, Alchemical Warfare, coming out January 15th on Metal Blade Records. I did have a couple of questions on a couple of the songs. Could I get into those with you?
Well, let's talk about some music.
Talk the music for a moment. My favorite track on the entire album was Her Master's Voice. That opening, and then it just slams, just totally freaking heavy, but with a groove at the same time that was fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit about that one? I love that track.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of interesting. I think a friend of mine, she's not into heavy metal, and we were sitting around listening to records and stuff. It was about a year and a half ago, maybe, and she was listening to Iron Maiden, and she just said to me, "This music is so sexless." And I thought, that's an interesting way of putting it. And then we're listening to some old Judas Priest, delivering the goods or something. She goes, "No, this has a groove. Motorhead has a kind of an energy, a rock and roll energy to it. But Maiden, she just did this kind of technical boys' own stuff. And so we got talking, and she made a bet with me. She said, in the new Dress Sovereign, you need to write a quote-unquote sexy song. She just said, something a bit of Danzig, a bit of 70s, I guess, rock in there. So I thought, all right, a challenge accepted. So I tried to write a kind of, there's a little bit of sort of Muscle Shoals, bit of sort of Motown notes going on in my back of my head with it, and then a sort of 1970s Uri via Danzig, via something like this was in my head when I was making it. But I wanted to make a kind of a sort of a sexy song. Strange answer, but that's kind of what it was. So I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So challenge accepted, and it's a kind of one of those "Ain't No Fury Like a Woman Scorned" sort of songs.
Yeah, very cool. The other one I had a note on here was Devil's Bane. 2 words I put was just face melter.
That's kind of, I suppose, influenced by early Bathory, speed metal, Venom, Exciter, that kind of thing. The whole album is a shift up in tempo and pitch from the previous two.
Right.
There's a lot more Motorhead, Venom, Tank, 1981, 82, sort of new wave British heavy metal going on in it. Of course, it's still doomy, but there's a bit more get up and go and kick you in the ass about it. So, there may be a few early bands like Carnivore, that kind of thing, also melted into the pot or whatever. But Devil's Bane is I think the lyrics are like a traditional pagan chant that I took from some book or something. It's some rural American backwater from the 18th century.
Yeah, cool, good stuff. The other one, the last one I want to talk to you about, just both about the song and the video, is Nature's the Devil's Church.
Yeah.
That's a great video. Forgive me if I'm asking a dumb question, because I couldn't really figure it out. Are those like splices of old horror movies, or is that something you shot and then made to look old in the video?
It's a 1922 movie called Haxan.
Okay.
Or Hex. Hexing. It's a Swedish movie from the early 1920s.
Okay.
That's quite sort of famous. And because we weren't allowed to meet to make a proper video, this is kind of the best we had to do with footage that we had. So, there's 2 more videos coming, and they have a sort of theme running between them. I sort of hit upon this great treasure trove of old silent movies from 100 or 120 years ago. And so we've had to just take little bits of that and interesting things. But it's a movie called Haxan.
Nice.
Haxan. It's a very cool movie. The start is a bit weird, but the last 20 minutes, half an hour, it's pretty dark stuff.
Now you worked with, is it Killian Monson on that?
Yeah, he's a friend of mine, yeah.
Okay, Morbid Visions, somebody you had worked with in the past, or?
It's just a friend of mine who's also was just going insane during lockdown, and I just said, man, I ain't got no budget, but you want to make a video with me for this? And he just said, well, yeah, I'm just sitting around in my apartment. So let's try and do something. He's done the next one as well, I think. Cool. So, just another fucking creative person trying to find an outlet during all of this. But he's done a fucking great job. So.
Yeah, fantastic video. And fantastic song. To give me a little bit of background on that one, Nature's the Devil's Church. Great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a sort of rumbling out war with Satan, Venom vibe. It's the first song that I wrote for it. I wanted it to have this more up-tempo kick in the ass to it. And the thing about Dread Sovereign is that it's different from Primordial in the sense that I'm not bound by the same kind of very serious parameters. And, there's no socio-cultural, political message to Dread Sovereign, but definitely it's not fantasy, so I take sort of historical situations that you could relate to occultism or whatever you may want to call it. So, for example, on the cover you have the idea is that the 3 characters are laboratory assistants to Isaac Newton, who famously was obsessed with discovering the secret of alchemy. So I'm quite interested in these post-Enlightenment European hermetic occult orders from the 15th to 18th century, and some of the things they believed in. So I try and base some of the songs in elements of historical context, I suppose, but then dress them in the language of heavy metal and a little touch of gallows humor.
Right.
Well, not humor is not the right word, but yeah, it's I try and make the distinction pretty different from what happens in Primordial. You know, different tone to the voice. Everything about Dread Sovereign is supposed to be rawer, dirtier, more old school sounding. So yeah, it's and of course me playing the bass in it is the difference as well. But yeah, I try not to make, you know, fantasy.
Yeah.
It's never really been my thing. But you know, there's an elements of which are subscribed to the dramatic pathos of heavy metal. You know.
Funny, you mentioned, you know, playing bass. I was listening to one of your podcasts. You said when you first started, you rated yourself like about a 3 on bass, and then you bumped yourself up to a 5 a little while later. Where do you rate yourself on bass right now?
4.
4.
No, I was, you know, I'd always dabbled with writing songs on the guitar, but I was a bit of a butcher of a bass player. But I never really gave a shit because originally Dread Sovereign was supposed to sound like Hellhammer, St. Vitus, Venom, Sirathungol, and that kind of stuff. But just over the process of time, I just got better at playing. It wasn't that really my intention. So the songs on the new album are a bit more, I'm not going to use the word complicated, but they're a little bit more involved, a bit more dynamic than before. So no, I mean, I never really had any interest in being a particularly great bass player or anything like that. It was not, you know, it was not really my interest. The Dread Sovereign is more about structure and tone, and the idea that we are 3 guys playing in a room together, like old school, rehearsing, no file trading, none of this nonsense, and that we were all, you know, in that room together and making noise and in a very traditional way. And so the record sounds like that. The record is not click tracked or cut and pasted, or it all bleeds into all the instruments, and it's all of us just playing in a room together. So that was the way I kind of looked at it.
It is a fantastic album. You know, like I said, I've listened to it a couple times. Once again, it's called Alchemical Warfare, the latest from Dread Sovereign. Alan, I always like to end with just some fun questions. I'm hoping these maybe are questions you maybe not have even been asked.
Cool. Yes, I'm a fun guy, so let's go for it.
All right. Would you rather be on a deserted desert island alone or with someone who never stopped talking?
That's a rather odd question. I suppose with somebody who never stopped talking, and maybe they can keep talking if you were on the other side of the island, I suppose. Does it mean I have to listen to everything they say?
No, probably not.
I don't know.
All right. Getting late in the evening, as it is over there in Ireland right now, you're looking for a late night snack. What do you grab?
Well, I live in the city centre, so I suppose Irish people are very used to their kind of post-drinking habits, which is like always kind of greasy chips with lots and lots of vinegar, which, you know, other countries use to clean things. We put on food. So personally, I don't know. You know, the late night eating isn't the best thing when you're middle aged. You know, you're watching the COVID belly. But I'll go with you know, greasy chips. I think is a real Irish thing.
All right. Favorite toy growing up as a child?
Favorite toy? Well, to be honest, when I was a kid, I was just obsessed with football. So all I did was kick a ball against a wall for hours and hours and hours every day, and because I wanted to be a professional footballer. So I wasn't really. I can remember just like burning and breaking and destroying most toys when I was a kid. But definitely a football.
Right.
I don't know if that counts as a toy or not, but definitely
absolutely. Yep, absolutely counts. Given your choice of household chores, would you rather do the dishes or the laundry?
Wow, we're really getting to the mundane nitty-gritty of life. Well, you know, laundry has a kind of satisfying smell to it when it's done, so let's go with laundry, yeah.
All right. If you could pick a television show to have a Dread Sovereign song placed in, what show would you pick?
maybe like political question time or something, you know. They can play it over the questions asked to our dear politicians. No, I don't know. We were asked before with Primordial for TV stations in Germany to use our music for documentaries about Irish sport, like hurling and Gaelic football.
Yep.
And I suppose it could fit with Dread Sovereign could maybe fit with people fucking crashing into each other and causing each other harm on a sports field.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they could put it to some, you know, nice colorized documentary footage of World War II or something. I don't know.
All right. Last one, and this is one we generally have a little bit of fun with. If they were to make a movie of your life, what actor would you have portray you in the movie? And it's your movie, your life. You can pick anybody.
Oh, I'll pick Oliver Reed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, a full-on 1977 hell-raising Oliver Reed with maybe a side portion of Richard Burton, and you know, I don't.
Very cool. Great answer. Great answer.
Maybe a bit like we could have a bit of Jack Nicholson, Chinatown's 1974 kind of, you know.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Certainly not a new actor. The sort of polished anodyne, you know, version doesn't really do much for me.
Absolutely. Alan, I thank you very much. This has been a fascinating chat. Once again, we've been talking with Alan Averill, bassist, singer for Dread Sovereign, their new album, Alchemical Warfare, out January 15th on Metal Blade. Fantastic album. Fantastic conversation. Thank you very, very much for your time tonight.
No problem, man. Take it easy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.